mistake they made last time. Welcome back, gang. The book In Search of Excellence, which focused on a number of companies doing things right, has sold 5 million copies. The follow-up book, already a bestseller, looks at the art of leadership. Our guest is Tom Peters. He's co-author of the new book, and he was also co-author of the first book, called A Passion for Excellence. Good to see you once again.
Good to see you, Dennis.
What is the goal of any company?
To make good things that work, retain customers or patients, satisfy students. The goal of any organization is to serve its customers, fundamentally, and that's as true for the League of Women Voters as the United Way campaign as it is for Domino's Pizza, General Motors, Johnson & Johnson, or Schoolroom.
All right. You say there's a revolution in back to basics. What has been going on over the past number of years, and why are we going back?
Well, kind of the way I look at it is after World War II, we obviously survived with our industrial base intact. Mm-hmm. We were alone. No matter what we made was bought by people in the United States and by Europeans, Asians, and so on. And essentially, we had it too good for too long, and we're not really challenged between 46 and the time of the OPEC deal in 73. And then bang, 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 starting in 73, OPEC, Japanese cars, Japanese transistors, you name it. And suddenly this great, fantastic American power called American management proved to be pretty brittle. And so I think people have been searching for the last half dozen years, and what they're finding is it's paying attention to quality service, customers, the people who make the product, and some things that are pretty simple, but which got lost in the shuffle.
Okay, you say there's a difference between management, we hear a lot about management nowadays, and leadership. What's the difference?
Well, the old models of management essentially were sort of mechanistic and military, and they said the manager was a cop, a referee, a devil's advocate, a pronouncer, a teller, or what have you. And we're saying that the heart of successful leadership anywhere are words like cheerleader, enthusiast, coach, facilitator, helper. One of them is about constraining and reducing, and the other is about letting people grow and really find their potential.
Okay, now where does the employee fit into this equation?
As the hero. I mean, we really literally talk about taking organization charts and flipping them upside down. So the customer and the first line people who serve the customer at the top, and the chairman of the board is at the bottom of the organization. Because, I mean, a good friend of mine, Ren McPherson, who ran the old Dana Corporation, said you got to understand, when you put on the hat of manager for the first time in your life, you give up honest work for the rest of your life, you know? You don't answer the phones, you don't open the mail, you don't drive the forklift, you do nothing of direct value to the enterprise. And that's really the theory. The heroes are the first line people.
Okay, you say the bottom line in this whole shooting match is the customers.
Right.
And that and every company has got to keep that customer at the top of the list all the time. The focus has to be there. And the second part, innovative. The company has to be innovative. Talk about the customer first.
The customer thing, again, you know, you look at the world over the last 20 years, and you would think that we run our schools for our principals. You would think that we run our hospitals for our doctors and administrators. You would think that we run our companies for vice presidents. I mean, who have the best parking spots, not customers, executive vice presidents and chairmen, you know? And what we're really saying is the only reason an organization deserves to live is to serve somebody. And so we're really talking about that old, you know, the old folk wisdom, which says the customer comes first, except that unfortunately, as all of us know when we go and try to buy a hamburger, a pair of shoes, or something more exotic, the customer is usually sort of gets short shrift in most places.
Now, there was a little anecdote in something I read this afternoon that suggested that some company, with the customer's knowledge, taped different phone calls that came in to talk about various products, and some of those phone calls were presented to the boss, and he sat down and listened for a period of time, once a week or twice a week, and said that in listening to the customer, it just changed the whole way he operated.
Yeah, what we're really talking about is the way people really actually work between the ears. And, you know, for the last 20 years, the way you communicate to executives is by staffs and by computer printout.
Yeah, that's right.
7 feet tall.
Hard data.
Yeah,
piece of
and it's
paper,
real different when you hear Mary Jo out in Podunk say, your toilet paper is really rotten for the following 7 specific reasons. That makes an impact on you, where 10 tons of paper, which may say the same thing in a sterile form, doesn't really cut it. And, you know, we're not saying throw away the market research. We're saying you got to be in touch. The new chairman of Campbell Soup, Gordon McGovern, once a week goes shopping in a grocery store. You know, small thing, but it's real different to see what your can looks like up against the Heinz can versus what have you, as opposed to some homogenized abstract staff report.
Now, what's the story about the people who made the things that had to do with contact lenses, and they kept getting the word from all these people that they felt scratchy and itchy? That's what their eyes felt like.
Yeah, company Allergan down in Irvine, California, and basically, you know, they are in the business of trying to help contact users.
Yeah.
And when they avoided the doctor and all the technical people and went to the patients weren't very articulate, but they were clear.
Yeah.
They said, we got a problem, it's itchy, scratchy eyes.
Itchy, scratchy.
Yeah, as the guy who was running the company said, look, any ophthalmologist who goes through 25 years of training is not going to tell you itchy, scratchy eyes. And yet what this company did essentially was try to deal in a straightforward way with itchy, scratchy eyes, and they developed a $100 million product as a result.
They came up with something that serviced the customer.
In a very practical way.
Now, what's the term naive listening mean?
Well, the difficulty with anybody, particularly a boss, but anybody who's been on the job for 5 or 10 years, is you get expert, which is obviously what everybody wants us to do. But the difficulty with the expert, I mean, I've sort of got my own practical definition. The expert's definition of listening is talking, basically. And what we're talking about is sort of the notion that naive listening says the real deal is to get down there with the customer, shut your mouth, open your ears, and say, what can I do for you? And it's all about sort of taking the expert's role and throwing it out the window and trying to listen in the customer's words. You know, what's really bugging them? And usually it's not the absence of some technical sophistication. I mean, it's as true in computers as it is in hamburgers, you know? It's some little bunch of little deals that really bugs you.
And you say that quality, well, that any product out there in the marketplace can always be improved.
Absolutely.
And really what the person is concerned about is when they get it, does it do the job for me, right?
That's right. And is it, yeah, exactly. And the one we use is sort of our favorite example is the Salisbury, Maryland-based chicken farmer, Frank Perdue. And Frank Perdue, out of Salisbury, has built an $800 million chicken business, 60% market share in such lightweight places as New York City. And the whole deal is Frank has made the chicken attractive, you know? And it started with a color. He says, what is a chicken, you know? It is a gray, blood-drained beast. So years ago, he started feeding it some kind of flower petals with a chemical called xanthophyll inside, and it makes the chicken yellow. And a yellow chicken is a lot more attractive when you look at it than the old bloodless gray chicken. And
let me ask the folks at home to jump into the conversation. Tom Peters is with us, and he is the co-author of A Passion for Excellence, The Leadership Difference. He has written a book along with Nancy Austin, and it has was released and boom, went right to the top of the New York Times bestseller list. I mean, it's something to open a book that strong. And as I said earlier, In Search of Excellence, 5 million copies sold, and something I read today suggested it is probably the largest selling business book in this century. But since we've sold more books in this century, it probably is in the history of the world. Probably. Isn't that true?
Sure.
I mean, but I mean, are there any other business books?
Probably
I mean,
not.
Probably before 1900, they didn't get them around.
There was no such thing. That's right.
They didn't have talk shows where you can come around and talk about your book. So I just promoted it in the world. Ever.
And it was you who did it 2 years ago.
Well, we were part of the starting effort, but you wrote you challenged people and you challenged managers to, I mean, examine the way they were doing things. And you know, something keeps coming back to me in different ways from your side of the table, from different guests, and it has to do with something. Remember that John Kennedy quote about not asking what you can get from the country, but what you can do for it?
Yeah.
Seems to me that that's the theory of the management, isn't it? Leadership.
That's right. Yeah, the manager is the assistant, the manager is the facilitator, the manager is a servant, basically.
But it's saying to the customer, what can I do for you?
And what can I do for you? Yeah. And the other thing, which is just fascinating to me, is we've all kind of gotten conned in the last 10 years with the computerization and robotization of saying that you can't have service. And that is just not so. I mean, there's a Seattle-based department store company, Nordstrom, and you can't tell Nordstrom stories in public because nobody believes you. I mean, the classic case is you go into a Nordstrom department store, A clerk takes you around from department to department for 45 minutes. If you can't find what you want, they then go into the back room and call competitors for the next 15 minutes to try and help you out.
Well, of course you're going to shop there.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. What are you going to do? Maybe you go to the competitor today, but you bought a friend for the next 25 years, and, which is the point to me, is in fact Nordstrom is probably the most profitable store of its kind in the country. So what I'm saying is that kind of apparently gone by the board's personalized service also pays off. People who are busy, people who want something, will pay a couple of extra cents.
Is it Connecticut? Connecticut comes into my mind of a person running a kind of a grocery store. Tell what a usual grocery store does in business and volume, and what this guy does and how he does it.
Stu Leonard's store in Norwalk, Connecticut.
That's it.
One store, one physical location. He does about $90 million a year worth of business.
Now, you ready for this? $90 million of business, one store, one location.
That's right. And the contrast is that the statistics collectors in the industry say the average store does about $320 a square foot.
Okay.
Leonard does about $3,200 a square foot, 10 times more. And again, get to that service thing again. In Stu Leonard's, where they got about 40 cash registers.
This is a grocery.
The grocery store, plain vanilla grocery store.
Okay.
If the checkout line ever gets longer than 2 people, they start giving out free cookies and ice cream to you.
Yeah.
I mean, pure insanity.
Right.
And they got mechanical chickens that's certified by Ripley's, believe it or not, as the world's fastest egg layer. It is a trip. Petting zoo for the kids outside. Yeah, I mean, they've just transformed this mundane act into something very special.
Now, evidently, he gives out shopping bags.
Yeah. Oh.
And they have the logo or whatever, and he's got pictures all over the store of all these people carrying his shopping bags.
That's right. In front of the pyramids, top of the Great Wall of China, front of the Kremlin, Stonehenge. He's collected something like 8,000 pictures of people who send him pictures of themselves displaying the bag while they're on vacation in some oddball place or other.
One underwater, as I recall.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. On a deep sea dive. That's right.
Now, if you have all of this, you're creating such tremendous goodwill for your customers.
That's right.
Customers number one. Okay.
Yeah.
Customers number one. What do you mean by managing or leading by wandering around? What does that mean? Is that the guy, the Campbell Soup guy that's
the Campbell
shopping?
Soup guy who's getting in direct touch, you know?
Yeah.
My favorite example of it is probably one of the most spectacular stories of business success in the last quarter century is the Bentonville, Arkansas-based Walmart stores, discount store business. A fellow by the name of Sam Walton has grown the business from $40 million to about $7 billion in discount retailing, for heaven's sakes, over the last 15 years. Walton, who is now in his late 60s, has 750 stores, and he literally visits every single one of them once a year, minimum.
Yeah.
And the deal, again, is it's that simple formula all the way through that says, what's the heart of retailing? It is the clerk talking to the customer on the retail floor. As a leader, how do you prove to people that it's important to you? You spend time there, you know? You don't spend time sequestered behind oak doors.
Yeah.
I mean, let's look. The average $7 billion company in this country, you want to see the chairman, 7 secretaries, the last 3 doors are oak and very, very thick. Walton works out of the same dilapidated, linoleum-floored headquarters building in Bentonville that he had when he had a $30 million company 15 years ago. The heart of the matter to him is to put the money into the stores, not into the Taj Mahal for the vice presidents.
Now, we have only touched on the customer service here, and that is the focus. A little later on, maybe somebody will bring it up, but we are going to cover innovation, which Tom Peters also says is terrifically important in making a company. He says it's just a matter of inches, you know, that makes one company better than another, and this push for excellence is really a push in a matter of inches. Going the extra mile, I think, as our friend Og Mandino says. A passion for excellence, the leadership difference, Tom Peters and Nancy Austin. Hi there, you're on Late Night America.
Yeah, my name is Jim from Washington, D.C.
Go ahead, Jim.
Mr. Peters and others used the Apple computer a number of months ago as the example of an excellent company. And yet today we read that Apple is in serious trouble. And I wonder what Mr. Peters' analysis is. Is it just that the product lost its viability in the marketplace? Did the management lose touch with the marketplace? Is it what's going on with the paragon of modern management that Mr. Peters had used to point to.
All right.
It's the whole industry seems to have radically overbuilt, because if you look at the last few days, IBM is predicting really an awful 1985. Wang Labs, Hewlett-Packard, Digital Equipment, Apple Computer, all the semiconductor companies in Silicon Valley are laying people off by the thousands. All of them at some level got conned by the incredible growth rate of 1983 and 1984, put on too much capacity too fast. The Apple products are superb. The Apple II, the Apple IIe, the Macintosh are absolutely superb products, and I have no doubt that it'll be a winner. All the people who know the industry a lot better than I say that Apple will be one of the small number of people who survive the shakeout. But one thing I'd make really clear, we talk about companies as being superb, we're talking about the long haul. There is nobody from Apple Computer to People Express to General Motors who isn't going to have some really, really rough years from time to time. And we're not preaching the possibility of perfection.
Can I take advantage of your expertise and you being in touch with so many different high rollers and so many companies and all the seminars that you've given throughout the last couple of years? And I want to follow up on that business about the computer situation. Mm-hmm. What do you think's going on? It's just not the overcrowding of the marketplace. There's something more going on, don't you think?
I think that's the short-term trigger. Yeah. I mean, some of the statistics say that everybody kind of age 42 bought a home computer, personal computer, because it was the thing to do, mm-hmm. and a lot of the market research is showing that they are going unused, basically. And so I think there was a little bit of hula hoop-ism into this incredible rush. And I mean, the fact that IBM has canceled its PC Junior and some of the rest of its product line down there is a real good sign that things are not just going to go on automatically and forever. And so I do think it's more than a short-term overbuilding. The other side of the coin is there was such a radical misjudgment of how fast things were going to be sold that after a 2 or 3 year period, my guess is that we'll see things kind of steady down again.
Okay. You don't see it in a more sociological view that maybe computers are not the be-all and the end-all?
No, I'm almost afraid to say the answer is no. I mean, I think what happened is, if you kind of look at it, it took forever for it to begin to take off. You know, everybody said automation starting in the 40s. Mm-hmm. Nothing happened until about 5 years ago in some respects, and then it took off too much.
Too fast. Okay.
But I think there's no question that if you got a 30-year time horizon, that we're moving toward the electronic cottage, or whatever term it is that a lot of people are using.
See, I still like to type on a typewriter. Hi there.
I like pencils myself.
You do good. I like that. I like that. Hi there. You're on Late Night America.
Hello. This is Jim from Toronto, Canada. Good evening, Tom. I want to just introduce myself a little bit. I started to work with a major computer retailer 2 weeks ago as a manager, and one of the first things that we were issued, or I was issued, was a copy of your book, Passion for Excellence.
Fantastic.
And, I have to tell you, I didn't read it, I studied it. And you talk about IBM, and you tout it as one of the companies that has a great sensitivity for the customer and is actually practicing the principles that you recommend.
Okay, go to the heart of the matter now. Go to the heart of the matter.
And
what's the question?
Went to an IBM seminar last week, and the guys were cocky. They weren't answering the questions of the people in the seminar, and they didn't seem at all to be the type of person that Tom was describing in his book.
Okay, what is the question?
Where did it break down?
Okay.
Okay. The power of IBM is the ability of their direct sales force to serve the customer well. IBM, I would be the first to admit, is not the expert at dealing with retailers that they are at dealing with the corporate account. In fact, if you want to look at the strength of Apple Computer, it is that they have done radically well relative to IBM through the retail channels and not very well at all through the corporate kinds of channels. I'm surprised to hear that IBM is cocky. I think they're confused in terms of how they're dealing with that part of the market. The cockiness is a sad thing to see. I'm sorry to see it. In all the places they deal direct, though, they still are an amazing institution.
Hi there, you're on Late Night America?
Yes, I have a two-part question for Mr. Peters. First, he's expressed some misgivings regarding business schools. I'd like to know what his misgivings are. Secondly, I'd like to know what he thinks one should get out of an MBA program? I'll be entering in the fall. I want to know what he thinks you should come out of business school with.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question. My misgiving is not to say, and when I talk with friends who've got kids going to business school or older people who go back, I never tell them not to go to business school. My misgiving is sort of looking at it from my perspective, working with faculties, and saying that it bugs me that business schools don't teach anything that has to do directly with dealing with customers. The people side of the business school equation and what they teach on the people side is pathetically bad. But the point in my mind is that you get your techniques at the business school and then have the guts to forego the plush job on the staff and get out to the sales branch, get into the factory, get into the design room, and learn the business from the bottom up. There's one superb user of MBAs that I've run into. It's the Trammell Crow Company, the Dallas-based real estate company. Trammell Crow hires high-priced MBAs from places like the Stanford Business School, but then for the first 3 years, they make them peddle second-rate warehouse space in places like East Los Angeles. And if you can survive those 3 years, then maybe the MBA has been worth something to you. But the heart of business is making it, selling it, designing it, delivering it on the front line, and the tools should be helpful over the long haul, but you apply them sort of where the rubber hits the road.
Hi there, you're on Late Night America.
Hello, Dennis. This is Terry from Pontiac. I'd like to congratulate you on your show. You've given something Detroit to be really proud of.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask Tom what he thinks of the recent Coca-Cola change-up and how they may have alienated some of their past
I'm
customers.
glad you asked that question because that question went through my mind 4 times today.
I've got to answer on 2 levels. I'm a fan of the old Coke. I'm one of those who wants the T-shirt that, has the X through it and says, I want the old Coke back. I would be the first to admit that I'm also kind of a fan of a principle that says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it seems to me that things were anything but awful for Coca-Cola. The other side of the coin is the place where they really measure the impact most closely, which is grocery store sales. Coke has been losing its edge for 10 or 12 years now to Pepsi, and maybe the consumer is telling them that they want a different kind of taste. But given that Coke has got probably the world's greatest franchise, there is simply no better brand name in the world, I think it's kind of nuts to fool around with a basic product because you really put the entire institution at risk for a couple of tenths of market share points. So I'm pretty negative about it, though I'm certainly not as an insider in any way, I'm not privy to the data that led them to make the decision.
Well, they have been releasing some stats that suggest, but you don't know if this is PR, that says, well, we do get a few negative calls, but most people like the new thing, or we didn't lose as many customers as we thought, and maybe this. So we want to give them the benefit of the doubt. But I am waiting. I am sitting back here waiting for America to rise up.
With scorn.
Somebody was over at my place this afternoon and said they were willing to chain their daughter to a fence in front of the Coca-Cola factory. She wasn't going to do it herself. Chain her daughter, right, to the fence. I want to see America rise up and say, we want the old Coke. And there are little pockets. It's happening all over America, see? And it's going to be a tremendous groundswell. And then people are going to realize that they can do anything. They're going to do it first with Coke, and then they're going to take out nuclear weapons and everything else, They can.
This is the beginning.
But the problem is, we'll have the nuclear weapons, right? And we'll be sending the aid to the Contras down there. But we'll change the Coke, right?
That's right.
That's the one we'll win on. The changing of the Coke. Lord. Hi there. You're on Late Night America?
This is Chuck Lewis. How are you?
We're terrific.
Okay, Tom, I was real interested in your show. I just wrote a book on selling myself, and I thought maybe I was the only one that wandered around in the dark ignorantly. And I'm so pleased to hear that you advocated for top management. Og Mandino is endorsing my book, and I'd like to send you a copy. But aside from that, I have a question for you. Do you know of any sales organization in the United States that is deliberately teaching a planned ignorance and this naive approach that you use?
Yeah, the company that we talk about in the book, and it's a surprising place to find it, is a textile company, Milliken & Company, headquartered in Spartanburg, South Carolina. They have really developed, or they have begun to develop, for instance, what they call a customer listening college. And the real thesis behind it is to instill this notion of naive listening throughout the organization.
Hey, before time runs out, we got a few minutes left, and we'll take another couple of calls, but I want to talk about innovation. You say in a company they have to be customer-oriented and they have to be innovative, and you say it can go in two directions. You can try to hit home runs, or you can hit a lot of singles. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, the real point we say is that too many companies have said, look, what we really need is a superb plan to figure out how to innovate. You know, and the superb plan to me is kind of the analog for the real swing for the fences. What we're saying is, if you look after the fact, what you find, whether it's the guy who did post-it notepads, whether it's a new clinic in a hospital, whether it's a new program on television, is some lonely, crazy, nutty, persistent character who hung in there against the odds with everybody telling him he was nuts, and eventually the thing worked out. And the problem, or why this is a big deal to me, Dennis, is that all the stuff you read in management says plan, 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 think your way through it. The individual's got a plan, but in retrospect, it's crazy champions who were allowed a little bit of free space to try stuff and test stuff, and they always are kind of really a pain in the neck to deal with. And what we're saying is the sizable institution that wants to stay vital has got to learn how to nurture these people rather than cut them off at the knees the first time they stick their neck out.
Yeah, and what was the company that said they release 7 or 8 new products a month or something?
A week.
A week.
Hewlett-Packard Company.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the deal. The guy who runs the consumer products at Citibank said what we do is we throw them up against the wall as fast as we can, and the ones that stick, we hang in there with.
That's the record industry. That's the way they operate. Up there. Who's the hit? Hi there, you're on Late Night America.
Yes, good evening, Dennis. I'm John from Wisconsin. I've got a question for Tom.
Go ahead, John.
And I'm wondering, Tom, do you counsel small family-run corporations, and can you offer advice as to their proper operation? Sometimes what's good for the family is not necessarily good for the corporation. I happen to be third generation.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Good, no.
As part of what I end up doing in seminars, I end up with a lot of family-run companies. The last thing I would want to do is give 7 seconds worth of counseling, because you're absolutely right, and that transition from one generation to the next is a very, very tough one. And it's easy and glib to say if the second generation doesn't match up, go outside, but we all know it isn't that simple. And all I can say is that it is a very legitimate problem. Most people don't figure it out with ease, and it's always painful, no matter how you go. And so no easy answers on that one, I'm sorry to say.
I like when you say that leadership is attention. I like that. A passion for excellence, the leadership difference. Tom Peters and Nancy Austin, and as I said to you a moment ago, when the book was released, it jumped to the top of the New York Times bestseller list, and I think you and Lee Iacocca is still going back and forth, but that's good company to be in.
Not bad.
And I think it also says a lot about the interest in people in managing and leading in a different way. The 1-2, as far as that's concerned. Terrific to see you once again. This will be a smash as well, A Passion for Excellence. Good title. I like it.
Thanks.
Thank you all for your calls, gang. Next week, we got all kinds of good things for you. It's going to be race weekend here in Detroit, so we're going to have race car driver Jackie Stewart going to be along, alcoholism expert Dr. Joe Persh, comedians Mike Binder and Dave Coulier. We're going to talk about the Detroit Comedy Jam. It's going to be coming up on HBO. Going to be a terrific show. Monday, former CIA Director Admiral Stansfield Turner is going to be with us. My thanks, of course, to Bill, the staff, the crew, the nice folks who make late night possible, especially all of you at home. We do the show for you. Thanks to Stroh's, Solarflex, and our PBS stations around the country. Have a terrific weekend. A passion for excellence, gang. Good night. From Detroit, we thank Tom for being with us.